welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. We're a few minutes late starting today because if I could draw you a list of technical issues that we'd had in the background, it would be about this long. But we're here now and we're ready to go. So I wanted to start with thinking about a leadership experience that many high-performing leaders, they quietly acknowledge it. And it's this: leadership can start to feel heavier than you actually expected. And this isn't usually because the work is harder. It isn't usually because your team may be incapable. It's because over time, what you're actually doing is carrying more than the role formally required you to carry. And it'll be things like this: absorbing tension in meetings, or holding on to decisions longer than others realize that you have, or anticipating the risks before they appear, or stepping in to support your team really early. And what happens is that slowly leadership becomes less and less about directing work, and it becomes more about you holding the emotional and strategic weight of everything around you. My name is Beth Bergen. I'm a global leadership communication coach. Join me today. I'd love it if you join in as we explore one of these least talked about leadership dynamics. It's that invisible load that already capable leaders accumulate, and what shifts when they actually learn how to redistribute it. Because leaders who sustain influence over time, they're not the ones that are carrying the most weight. They're the ones who learn what to hold on to and what to actually let go of. So before we talk about lightening the load, what I'd like to do is to help us to understand how the weight builds up in the first place, because it almost always sneaks up on us. Now, the first point I want to talk to is this. Many of us, we're rewarded for over-functioning. And that's often how we get promoted. So we're rewarded early in our work and our leadership journey for being a high performer, someone who fixes things up, someone who steps in quickly, someone who solves things to prevent other people from struggling with them, someone who's great at anticipating everyone else's needs and who does whatever they can to prevent failure. And those early leadership successes can be built on this, which is all around your responsiveness, your reliability. You step in before the problems escalate. You make things work under pressure. And all of this is awesome. All of this is awesome. However, as a leader, what happens is that we make almost this like psychological contract with ourselves, which tells us that if I don't step in, if I don't intervene, then outcomes are at risk. And once we start making that psychological contract with ourselves, two things happen. One is that we get into this reinforcement loop. We enjoy the recognition as being a dependable person. Our team unconsciously starts to defer every decision back to us. So it's kind of like we've stepped back in again and taken some control. And our responsibility quietly expands. The load grows through your success at stepping in and high performing, not from failure. It grows from that success. So what happens is that we actually stop noticing that we're stepping in and that we're relying on the recognition and we kind of enjoy it and our teams are deferring to us a whole lot, we stop noticing that and it becomes automatic. So we stop noticing how quickly we might volunteer. We stop noticing how often we solve things early. We stop noticing how rarely we let others sit with the struggle so that they can actually learn how to deal with it. And because our brain seeks certainty, we go back to what we know. Because identity-wise, we're always going to want to protect our competence. So in order for us to grow, we actually need to lean back and learn to tolerate that slower, messier kind of growth that we're there to build in other people. Yeah, and that can be quite difficult. The load grows fastest in leaders who are promoted and or the position themselves, or I'll start again. The load grows fastest in leaders who are promoted because they see themselves or position themselves as being indispensable. So if you were promoted because you're always there, you're always solving things, then your load is likely to get heavier quicker. Yeah. The second point I want to talk to is this. Managing your team's emotions, it is a leadership task. That's accepted. But it's really important that you don't let it wear you out. Like as the leader, it's your job to regulate your team's anxiety, to absorb any frustration that might be happening without escalating it and making a bigger deal of it than necessary. It's also really important that you maintain your composure when things get messy. Now, this aspect of your leadership role is it's very rarely acknowledged. It consumes a lot of time and energy, your cognitive and your relational time. So what you must do, what you must learn to do is to consciously process this emotion. Otherwise, what happens is that you start to internalize it. Your frustration goes up, your irritability goes up, your patience is likely to be going down, and the quality of the decisions that you're making is likely to go down because that accumulated emotional residue, it shows up most often as fatigue. And what's important for you to do is to develop some recovery rituals that it's not about you enduring this, and it's not about a marathon. We want you to be able to absorb what's going on, not to amplify it. We want you to be able to filter those emotions before they spread. And this is all about your leadership intelligence. It's also about you maturing as a leader and learning how to do this. The third point I want to talk to today is this. Decision residue takes up your thinking, I'm not doing so well today with my speaking. It was all that tech stuff that put me off. Decision residue takes up your strategic thinking space. Look, even when authority is shared, if what you're doing is replaying those decisions in your mind, if you're anticipating what the consequences downstream might be, if you feel ultimately responsible, then what that does is it creates an invisible decision residue. That means that your mind is carrying on working long after the task is done. You're still thinking about it. So have a think. Are you actually handing psychological ownership over to your team, or are you just kind of sharing a bit of formal authority? Because, and I spoke about this at length a couple of weeks ago, when you're not handing over that psychological ownership, it reduces your mental availability, it reduces your creativity, it reduces your strategic thinking space. So what you actually need to define is, where does my responsibility for this decision truly end? So, as I said a couple of weeks ago, I spent the whole Leadershipisation, all things leadership session on this point of handing over psychological ownership. So it's worth going back to have a look at that, or yell out to us on the platform that you're watching this on, and we can send you the link to it. So this is really important. Our mind keeps working long after the task is done because we haven't definitely handed it over. Okay, fourth point today is this. When you believe, if I don't hold on, things might drop, that's when things are likely to get messy. So when you've convinced yourself that if you don't do it, there'll be nobody else there to do it, that's when things get messy. Maybe you've built an identity, as I said earlier, around this reliability. Maybe this being prepared, this stabilizing force, so that others can absolutely depend on you. Now, what that means is that letting go can actually feel quite scary because, what if I lose some status? What happens if I disappoint other people because things don't work out? What if I become replaceable? That would be horrific. And because we're so worried about those things, which actually fly in the face of this identity of reliability that we've established, what we do is we unconsciously retain the load. We hold on to this extra load and responsibility because that enables us to hold on to our identity. Now, what I know for certain is this: our authority deepens when we shift our identity. When we shift it from I hold everything together, look at me, aren't I awesome? When we shift from that identity to an identity of I build systems that work, or I build people that work, that's going to make a really big difference. So what we can starting to see here is that the load is created by the behaviors that you are currently implementing as a leader. Yeah, so that's quite a lot to think about, really. Point 5 today is this: it's often the invisible load that weighs the most. It's often the invisible load that weighs the most. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we carry too much, what we end up doing is we focus operationally. We focus on the operational noise rather than the strategic. And so we can become pretty reactive. We lose a lot of that reflective thinking time that can be so important at a strategic level, at a management level. We start to respond or react to things. We do the reacting. We come up with the answers rather than shaping the future. So we stop being a thinking partner, or maybe we've never started being a thinking partner, and we push in because we're carrying too much, and our thinking becomes a lot more short term. So what's important to us when we feel this way is that we think that we've got to be busy. We've got to remain busy all the time, because then we're going to get praised. And actually, because we're so busy being operational, because it feels so productive to us, we keep on doing it. What happens is that it's actually quite dangerous for us, because our strategic influence goes down. So we're so busy down in the weeds that we're not able to contribute higher up in the way that we could. And for some people, that's exactly where they want to be, as I've said, weighed down, but it's actually your own identity that's keeping you there. So let's look at one practical tool that you can implement straight away that will make a difference for you. It's called a load mapping exercise. And what I'd like you to do is this: list 3 things that you are currently carrying that are not explicitly yours. Maybe they're not truly requiring your level of input, or maybe they're not moving forward because you're holding on to it mentally. So 3 different things from across those 3 areas that I've looked at. And then what I want you to do is to ask yourself this question: who could own this, and what would they need from me to succeed? So you're thinking about your team, who you've got out there. Who could own this, and what would they need from me to succeed? And then what you're able to do is to redistribute to build the capacity of the team. You're building the capacity of the team. So a few weeks ago, we also explored this, where what we looked at was, okay, you're here because maybe you're a doer. Now, instead of getting outcomes, what you're here to do is to build the capacity of your team. This redistribution not only builds the capacity of the team, it will also build your capacity as a leader, which is really important. Yeah? So that's your load mapping exercise. I challenge you to actually hand those things over, because it will start making a difference to your load. And once you've done it once, it will be easier for you to do it again and again. Okay, one deep reflection question that we've got today, and it's this one: where in my leadership am I carrying responsibility that reinforces my identity but limits my sustainability? What do I mean by that? Where are you holding on to things that reinforces your identity that, yeah, I'm unstoppable, I'm the most reliable person in the place, I get stuff done? Where is it reinforcing that identity, but it's actually going to wear you out longer term? Yeah? Here, I encourage you to be as honest as you possibly can be with yourself. Ask the question, come back to it, ask it again, so you get closer and closer to an outcome. So, what are our key takeaways here? Well, the first one I think is this: this invisible weight, it builds up through success, not through weakness. So, it's not that your team is weak, but it's that you keep doing things. Emotional and decision ownership can actually extend way past your formal role. And it will extend further if you want to keep on taking the weight on. You can do all sorts of things for everybody else. And what will happen is that when you do step back, they will either rise or they won't be able to do it. It's not sustainable for you to hold on to this weight. So what's really important is that you make a decision, and you've got to be quite deliberate about this decision. You're either going to choose to deliberately hold on to it or to let it go, but it comes down to you. You know, there's a lot of uncomfortable truth in today's topic, because some of the load that you're carrying isn't there because the role demands it. It's there because you haven't let it go, because being the one who holds it all together is important for you. It feels safe for you. It feels, in many cases, just like leadership. But over time, what it's doing is it's diminishing your capacity. It's diminishing your strategic impact, and may well be diminishing your opportunity for other other promotion or opportunities within the company. Perhaps it's even diminishing your enjoyment of leading. So, if today's conversation made you recognize that you might be overholding or overfunctioning or overowning in ways that no longer serve you or your team, don't ignore this. It needs deliberate work. So, if you're ready for an honest conversation, use the QR code that's there. We'll have a conversation about what you're carrying and what might need to shift for you so that you can lead with more clarity and more influence and sustainability. So use that QR code, or we'll pop a link in the comments. And book with me to discuss what your next steps might be. It's a coaching conversation. It will be direct and practical, and it often points to where leadership starts to evolve, because leadership actually doesn't become lighter when you become stronger. It becomes lighter when you become wiser about what you're going to hold on to. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's been my pleasure to be here. If you've got questions or comments, pop them on the platform that you're watching this on, and we will get back to you. If you, as I said, QR code or a link, and let's make some time to sit down and talk if this has all resonated with you today. Thank you so much. See you next week. Bye now.